Welcome back to Tar Heel Illustrated from the Smith Center in Chapel Hill. I am Brian Balcom here with publisher Andrew Jones for another edition of Three Things following North Carolina's 93-67 win over LaSalle. But before we get started, I want to let everyone at home watching know that we have a free promo at THI up to the spring. And AJ, can you tell them more about it and how they can get it?
Even if you're in your car, even if you're out for a jog, even if you're at a coffee shop, wherever you are, you can go ahead and sign up right now. If you've not ever checked this out and thought about it, and maybe you don't like the idea of spending money on a site like this, you can now get it for free until March 20th. That's spring. That's basically through the end of basketball. They will be in the postseason by the time it expires. You can get THI for free. Until then, just by coming to our site, we got links everywhere. Promo code is Belichick. You know, the new football coach. So just go ahead and use the promo code, sign up. You get it for free until March 20th. It's an unbelievable deal. It's a no-brainer. There's no strings attached. It's not like you have to sign up afterward. Just sign up, check us out, come join our community, and I'm sure that if you'll probably like it enough and you'll stick around and be a member of Tar Heel Illustrated for the rest of your existence.
And I'm sure both me, AJ, the rest of the THI staff would love to have you guys. And
if you were with us the last week and a half, you'd know that we absolutely crushed it. We weren't wrong in anything we reported. We were paving the way. We didn't put everything out on social media or in free content because that's what our paying subscribers get. They knew what was going on. A lot of other people didn't. That's what you get. That and so much more being a member at THI. But this is a pretty good game of the Tar Heels today, and they would have a chance to read a lot of our content on it, right?
And it was a game that UNC, needed. They had a break off with exams. Even they had a break off between Maui and Alabama, but not a true week off with traveling home and things of that nature. But one of the biggest things we saw was they ran an offense. There wasn't a lot of standing around. There was at times early on, but there wasn't a lot of standing around. And they had 22 assists, tied for a season high, their most since the season opener against Elon. 36 made field goals, tied for a season high they had against American. And it was just a more complete effort on the offensive end. And it felt like you could see some things they were trying to do. And you can say, hey, this wasn't here 3-4 weeks ago. This is what they're trying to do. And they just ran offense and looked a lot better than they have in previous weeks.
Guess what I did not type? I obviously didn't tweet if I didn't type it, and didn't feel compelled to type today. Something I have typed a lot in the last several games. Dribble, 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 drive, fall to the floor. Didn't do that. The things that had been so aggravating about watching them, the previous 4 games especially, the 3 losses to Auburn, Michigan State, Alabama, and then even in the win over Georgia Tech, they were not a good team. Still got to win, but they weren't good, was just the constant driving to a wall offense of the guards and kind of ignore everybody else out there. Well, in that 5-game span, they had 57 assists, 67 turnovers as a team. So they flipped it 22-11 today. And the reason is because A, they ran offense to the post. B, the drives, they had kickouts to the perimeter for open shooters. They found open shooters. They had LaSalle, no pun intended, playing on their heels defensively a lot more than the last few teams they had played. This is not a good offensive team. No team's a good offensive team when they don't run competent offense. And dribble, 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 drive, fall is not competent offense. Dribble, 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 shoot with a guy with a hand in your face from 20 feet. That's not good offense. We saw the complete shift from what they had been doing today. Clearly, the points of emphasis that Hubert said last Saturday after the Georgia Tech game, they applied. I also think having some time away, finishing exams and not always thinking football helps sort of this team naturally reset. So the thing is, RJ Davis said, they got their headspace back. I wrote last week they didn't have it because they admitted that they didn't have it. And Hubert even acknowledged they didn't have it last week. So they were a more relaxed team. I think they were a more energized team, and they played a lot more connected basketball today. And we saw it with the drives that I can only think of 1 or 2 times where one of the guards drove, and it was like a questionable shot. Carolina was 17 for 22 on layups. A lot of those were post moves. Their post guys were sealing their men and getting the ball. We had not seen initiated post offense from an entry pass much at all this season. Saw it today. And you know what? Then Allen Lubin, who has the best big man hips on the team. And when I say that, he knows how to use his hips. He knows how to get position on his man. He gets his butt low. He uses his hips. He gets position. And even though he's 6'8", he's got a 7'4" wingspan, and it gives him an advantage there, even against taller defenders, because of his size, because of his strength, because of his length with his wingspan, and he's very efficient around the basket. We saw James Brown with an offensive move at entry. We saw entries across the board. Jalen Williams even had one. Jalen Washington's struggling still. And he only played 4 minutes until he went in for like the last 2 minutes of the game. Kai Claude was getting in there before him because he was sealing his man. He was boxing out on both ends of the floor. So we saw an actual offense in the half court today. And quite frankly, we hadn't seen it before. It was just mishmash chaos. And that's one of the reasons why this team had played so poorly for a couple of weeks before this week off. So you had that down low. And I was actually tweeting, hey, that's the second post entry today. That's 2 more we've seen since March. And then they had a third.
Orlando Baycott was the one.
Yeah. And they also had kickouts. And Tyson gets a 3 from the right corner, a 3 from the left corner, and they're a result of kickouts, drives and kickouts, and a defense that had its head spinning some. So across the board, excellent offense, excellent spacing, excellent movement, excellent recognition. Even Ian Jackson, who had his 5th assist of the season, that was to Tyson in the right wing for a 3. He had 2 threes 37 seconds apart. The other one was in the left corner that I was just talking about. That was assisted as well. So got to applaud the approach. See, I often will not look at the points scored number if we're discussing a team that must improve a lot. It's the approach that matters. And if you approach it the right way, the production will come. This team approached today the best they've approached any game since American, which was over 3 weeks ago.
And I think, you mentioned the kind of the process to get the points and the stats. The front court, I'm talking Drake Powell, Jalen Withers, Jalen Washington, Allen Lubin, Tyson, James Brown, combined for 36 points and 21 rebounds. But I think more importantly, they had high percentage looks, and they were 14 for 22 from the field. And
here's a stat for you. Here, let me interrupt you real fast because this is important to note. In the previous 5 games leading into this one, and they hit the 90s in a couple of those, all right? Players taller than 6'6" on this roster combined were averaging 16 points and 16 rebounds a game. All of them combined in those previous 5 games. This was not a balanced team. It was an easy team to scout. It was an easy team to defend, and they were getting worse and worse and worse. You just read the numbers. Everybody saw the way they played. It is not rocket science, and that's why they looked a lot better today. And if this team goes to Charlotte to take on Florida on Tuesday, which I think is a must-win game, they have a chance at knocking off the Gators.
And I think as good as the offense looked at times, it's important to note that you can take it as a negative, but as a positive, they left so many points on the board. They missed 12 free throws. Yeah. They were 11 for 23, and that's the most they've missed since December 2nd of 2020 against Texas in the Maui Invitational, where they were 18 for 32.
I covered that game. That was the COVID Maui Invitational
in Asheville.
Yeah, and the thing about it is they have not shot great from the free throw line since the Dayton game. They had been 68% as a team. They should be around 76. They got a lot of really good shooters. So they scored well. They moved the ball well. They look like the kind of thing that you don't wince at and say, my God, I got to watch this for 40 minutes. It was actually a pretty entertaining looking basketball team for much of the game.
And as well as they played on offense and ran an offense, they defended just as well, if not better. Corey McKeithen, who averaged 18.8 points per game, scored 8 points a day, was held scoreless in the first half. He was 3 of 10 shooting, 0 of 4 from 3. And LaSalle as a team was only 5 for 19 on layups, and they were held to 35.6% shooting from the field. So it was just a really good effort on both ends of the floor, held them to 20 points in the paint, and UNC scored 50. A plus 30 in that category as well. Yeah. Shows kind of how well the front court really was in this game. And
until the Georgia Tech game, only one half out of the first 16 halves of the season, first 8 games, only one half had an opponent shot below 35%. Now, it happened to both halves against Georgia Tech. I think a lot of that's because Georgia Tech's not very good. and they were missing their leading scorer. I don't think LaSalle is that far off from Georgia Tech, to be honest with you. It's an Atlantic 10 team. It's a middle of the road Atlantic 10 team, which makes it a decent team. It's a pretty solid conference. And the fact that LaSalle for the game was hovering right above that is an indication that the Tar Heels were locked in. I also think what they did with McKeithen was huge because he went out of the game about 6 minutes in with his second foul, and he hadn't shot the ball yet. He didn't shoot until he came back in a little while later. At that point, Tar Heels built a big margin. And it's important because this team has not done a good job of identifying the other team's scores and making things difficult for them. And they did that today, and that's what's important. That's why I agree with you. And you said the defense might be more impressive than the offense today because they identified what LaSalle did well and forced LaSalle to score heavily out of character if they were ever going to have a chance to compete in this game. It didn't happen. And also, it should be noted, going back to the first point of our three things, McKeithen was forced to defend. That's why he committed those fouls. Carolina had a 16-0 run. It was an 8-2 LaSalle. Carolina had a 16-0 run that turned into 20-2, and they were comfortably ahead all during that whole time. And McKeithen picked up 2 fouls on the defensive end, trying to guard an active, moving, aware offense. So their offense helped take them out of the game too. And I think that's important. We hear about complimentary football all the time. The Tar Heels played complimentary basketball today, and they were able to get him out of the game, and that was huge. And quite frankly, other than a few sequences in the first several minutes of the game, there wasn't a whole lot that LaSalle did that their coach, legendary coach, Fran Dunphy, if you know Philadelphia, you know Fran Dunphy, that he probably will be pleased to watch on the film. They're going to have an ugly film room because Carolina chewed them up on one end of the court and chewed them up on the other end of the court, ultimately spewed them out to the tune of a 26-point win. So this is a very alert, very aware defensive performance by the Tar Heels, very active. They played like there were 5 guys playing defense. A couple times they didn't close out on shooters, but they were much better at that. The activity defensively, the communication defensively was as good as it's been for a while. And this is a much better team than American. This is a better team than Elon. And Carolina beat the crap out of a club. Beat Temple, by the way, and they beat Cornell by 17 points, and Cornell just won at Cal. So this is not a bad team. This is not a terrible team. So this is an impressive win for the Tar Heels to execute the mission, which is something either they haven't done or the mission's been off, so the mission was fixed as well.
And I think on the defensive end, their success is a really barometer for their success as a whole. They're 4-0 when they hold teams under 40% shooting. And I think today was also important. They played good defense, and they also played good defense without fouling. LaSalle only shot 11 free throws, tied for the fewest in the season, which American had. And it was just a good all-around effort where you could see, first off, they had effort on defense. They've been at times where the effort itself is lacking. But it was just, like I said, complimentary basketball on both ends of the floor. You could really start to gel a little bit and make strides on what they've been looking to fix, the 3-game losing streak and even against Georgia Tech.
So what this means is the numbers. Yeah, so what this means is the numbers on the stat sheet.
Yeah.
And what this means is the third thing. The numbers on the stat sheet back up what our eyeballs saw. I thought Carolina's numbers during that period in some of those games actually were better than what my eyes saw. Like sometimes, and numbers are what they are, but they were so bad, they still hit some shots and were able to build a few numbers. They're rebounding. They were rebounding. They were around even rebounding during that 5-game stretch. They won the boards. They were plus 11 today on the boards. They were comfortably ahead for a while, especially on the offensive glass. When they were missing for a while in the first half, they were grabbing a lot of their misses. Claude had 4 rebounds in like 3 minutes, his first 3 minutes of the game. And he was doing a little Armando action out there, rebounding his own misses, which is fine. He stayed after it. That's one of the reasons Jalen Washington didn't play much, because he doesn't stay after it. He could watch Lubin, he could watch Claude, and he could watch James Brown, who gave them solid minutes today, and he could take a cue from them because he's more talented than those guys. But there's an edge and motor thing that kind of needs to catch up still, and that is a work in progress. Good thing they have those other guys and had them out there today because they helped the team win. So what this means is this team played a basketball game that connected to Hubert's mission, and maybe the mission was either different or it was articulated differently, and that's why the players executed. I can't believe that Hubert would have had a game plan going into Georgia Tech and going into Alabama. He'd say, okay, you guys, Seth, RJ, Elliott, drive into the lane, make sure 5 people collapse on you or guarding you, make sure you crash into somebody, fall down, lose the ball, throw the ball up to the glass or has no chance of going in, and occasionally get fouled. I mean, in the Michigan State game and the Georgia Tech game, Elliott Cadeau attempted, I think, 1 free throw total in those 2 games. And he's crashing to the floor all the time. They need to wear helmets. They do a lot of concussion research at this university. It's a good thing because the guards were probably borderline concussionville with the way they've been driving. So I know I'm kind of joking some, but I'm making a point because the mission today was what we saw. So Hubert said restart last Saturday. We wrote a piece the other day about a restart and itemized the things that when I asked him last Saturday, okay, what's priority number 1 during your restart? Well, he listed like 6 things, and he was right because there was nothing going well for this team. They weren't doing anything well. Well, they did a lot of things well today. Now, it's not the same level of what they played, although I think Georgia Tech, I think they're comparable. It's a huge step up with Florida coming up. I mean, that is a massive game for this team. Florida is an excellent team. They got a ton of length. They're well coached. And then they got UCLA. UCLA won at Arizona today. This team has to carry what it did today and its mission and execution and its spirit today. And they got to take it to Charlotte and then take it to MSG because they must win those 2 games.
And I think
the ACC sucks. You're going to have very few opportunities in league play to help your NCAA situation. I think right now with Carolina only having 1 solid win, Dayton's a solid win. Dayton's in the same league that LaSalle's in. Dayton should win that league. Although I think Rhode Island's undefeated and Loyola's undefeated. Loyola Chicago's in that league too. They got some good clubs there. If Carolina can win these next 2 games and go 14-6 in the ACC, they should be able to get into the tournament. Mm-hmm. So that's why these are really important. But if they don't win these next 2, they're going to have to go like 18-2 or win the ACC tournament. That's how bad the league is, and that's how the league's going to hurt one another once they dive fully into league play. So this is a huge week coming up, Brian, and this was a perfect performance for them to head into those 2 games.
It's something that gives them a chance to have momentum and see, hey, like this is what we can do when we play the basketball we're supposed to. It can be a blueprint for what they can do against teams like UCLA and Florida, who have a combined record of 19-1. In Florida, by the way, they're not just 10-0. They've won every game by 13 or more points. They've been winning games pretty handily. And UCLA has won 8 straight games with a comeback win today against Arizona. So
Tar Heels are going to be underdogs both games this week. But at least today they can go into that with some confidence. And I would be remiss if we didn't spend a few seconds talking about Cade Tyson. I mentioned his threes, but Tyson had not hit a field goal since the Hawaii game coming into today. He had 2 free throws in the previous 5 games.
And he had 11 points in the last 6 games entering tonight. Combined.
Yeah, well, in the last 6, but disregard Hawaii because he did well against American and Hawaii. When you go back to Dayton in the 5 games, once they started the Maui Invitational, those 3 games there, Alabama and Georgia Tech, Cade Tyson had 2 free throws, no field goals. He had 23 points today. Now, he's had 3 good games, and those games have been American, Hawaii, and LaSalle. That's along the lines of what Belmont played a lot. So we know what he is against those teams. He must show them that he could produce against the Florida and produce against the UCLA because they desperately, desperately need him to be a very positive performer and to give them production because they're much bigger when he's on the floor. You saw it today, and that was part of their defense. They're much bigger when he's on the floor. They don't have to go super small because he's a big 6'7". He could play a 6'8" with his strong body, and we saw the way he defended today a couple times. He could defend out on the perimeter some, but a couple times down the paint, he defended like a 6'9". They desperately, desperately need that because right now it looks like Jay Wash's path is going to be a lot slower if it ever materializes. But they've seen 3 big-time flashes from Tyson, but they haven't been against power conference teams. He must show them he can do stuff later this week. He told us today, you were standing next to me when we were talking to him, that he was frustrated. He'd been frustrated. He's had a lot of conversations with his people. And they said, look, ultimately it's up to you. You got to do it. So he did it today. So to be the guy they brought him in to be, He's got to capitalize. He's got to add on to it. So he will be as important as anybody else this week. And the last guy I want to single out is Elliot Cadeau, because I've been running stats on his assists and turnovers big time lately. I don't know what the final numbers were. You might have it in front of you.
7 assists and 1 turnover.
7 assists, 1 turnover. He had 24 assists and 23 turnovers in the 5 games heading into today. Like everybody else, he just hadn't played well. He looked a lot more like Elliot Cadeau today, played a lot more composed, played a lot more with his head up like he did before they went to Hawaii, and that was a really good sign. So all positives for the Tar Heels today, but they must carry it forward against a legit Final Four team that they're playing this on Tuesday. And I think I haven't really seen UCLA this year, but I know Mick Cronin. I've seen a lot of his teams play in person, and I know they're pretty talented, and they got a good win today. They're probably Elite Eight good themselves. So Carolina needs Tyson. They need Cadeau. They need Claude when he comes in to give them some minutes. They need RJ to start hitting a little bit more. That's still not something that happened. There's a lot to achieve over the next week, and they can literally shift the narrative about them in the next week. Or it'll be back to the same thing, and this is just a one-off, kind of like what people think maybe American was.
And I don't think it's dramatic to say that this next week could really determine the rest of their season and the fate of their season. Like you said,
it can determine what they need to do. So it'll put pressure on them to have very little room for error in a terrible conference. And I'm not overstating it. And the ACC is, for a power conference, far below the Big 12. And I don't want to hear crap about money. ACC's got more money than the Big 12. A lot more. Even when Oklahoma and Texas were in there, the ACC was making a lot more money. Okay? So it's not about that. It's about bad coaching. A lot of bad coaching hires in the league. Recruiting has been down. A lot of schools haven't made great decisions with the portal. They've lost really good players to the portal. It's about a lot of things. And the league should be so much better than it is. And it's not. Nothing anybody can do about it right now as far as Carolina goes. So they will put a lot of pressure on themselves when ACC play starts to have to go like 17-3 and maybe possibly have to, win the ACC tournament or something like that to get in. We've never had those kind of conversations in December before about any ACC team. But UNC is in that situation because it's done it to itself, and the league has done it to itself. Now Carolina can at least try to control its needs by getting some wins this week. And they don't need to split. They need to win both.
And at this, like I said, they control their own destiny for the next week. That's what matters. That's what we need to focus on. You'll be there. I'll be there from Charlotte. And hopefully, for their sake, there'll be a Carolina-friendly crowd that they can kind of rally behind and give them a little bit of effort. But
it'll be interesting to see what the crowd is. And, we saw a football-centric crowd today. We saw some pretty interesting stuff with Bill Belichick and Bryce Baker. So that was kind of wild how football sort of took over basketball for a while in this building. But it is what it is. I'm looking forward to getting there and seeing both games and chronicling this team's path. We don't know what the path is, but at least today they should have given Carolina fans a little bit more hope that path might be a positive one moving forward.
And they took a couple steps forward, and we'll see if they can keep that trend going on Tuesday night against Florida. I'm Bryant. He's AJ. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment if you love our
freebie. Remember, it's free. Free to March 20th. Just go to the site. It's free. Promo code Belichick. He's that football coach they hired.
In case you haven't heard, he is the new head football coach in North Carolina.
They hired some guy from New England, apparently. Some guy from the cold.
From some guy from the NFL. No college.
Some NFL guy.
I'm Bryant. He's AJ. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.